The wooden doors groan open, and dust particles dance in the fractured light streaming through broken stained glass. In the center of the altar, untouched by 4 decades of decay, sits a leather journal. Sarah reaches for it with trembling hands. The first entry, dated March 1984, reads in shaky handwriting, "They're still here. Every night I hear them in the walls. The congregation left, but something stayed behind." Her husband Michael stands frozen beside her, staring at the pages filled with increasingly erratic sketches and words that spiral into madness. If you're fascinated by forgotten places and the dark secrets they hold, subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you don't miss any exploration. Now, let me tell you how this couple stumbled upon one of the most disturbing discoveries in an abandoned church's history. The Church of St. Augustine stands 23 miles from the nearest town, accessible only by an overgrown dirt road that disappeared from most maps in 1985. For 127 years, this Gothic revival structure served a small rural community of fewer than 200 souls. Local farmers and their families gathered here every Sunday, their voices rising in hymns that echoed through the wooden pews and up into the vaulted ceiling painted with fading celestial scenes. The church was more than a place of worship. It was the beating heart of a community that depended on faith to survive harsh winters and unpredictable harvests. Father Thomas Whitmore arrived at St. Augustine in 1978, a young priest fresh from seminary, with idealistic dreams of serving a humble congregation. Parishioners remember him as earnest and devoted, perhaps too devoted. He spent hours alone in the church after services ended, often staying until dawn. Margaret Henderson, who was 16 at the time, recalls seeing candlelight flickering in the windows at 3 in the morning when she'd pass by on her way to help with early farm chores. Father Thomas said he was praying, she told local historians years later, but sometimes we'd hear him talking, having full conversations like someone was answering him back. Everything changed during the winter of 1983. The congregation noticed Father Whitmore's sermons becoming increasingly strange, filled with references to scriptures that didn't exist, and warnings about the ones who never left. He stopped eating with parishioners at social gatherings, claiming he needed to fast to maintain spiritual clarity. His appearance deteriorated rapidly over those frozen months. Dark circles deepened under his eyes, his cassock hung loose on his thinning frame, and his hands developed a constant tremor that made lifting the chalice during communion a visible struggle. On the morning of March 15, 1984, 17 families arrived for Sunday service to find the church doors locked from the inside. Father Whitmore didn't respond to their knocking. When they finally forced entry through a side door, they discovered the sanctuary completely empty. Every pew had been pushed against the walls, creating a hollow center space. Candles burned in strange patterns across the floor, their wax forming symbols no one recognized. In the choir loft, they found Father Whitmore kneeling before the organ, his lips moving in silent prayer, completely unresponsive to their calls. An ambulance transported him to a psychiatric facility 3 hours away. He never spoke another coherent word. The church remained open for another 9 months, with visiting priests conducting services, but attendance dwindled. Families reported feeling watched during sermons. Children refused to attend Sunday school in the basement, complaining about voices coming from behind the walls. Objects moved overnight, hymnals found scattered across the floor, crosses turned upside down, the baptismal font drained, despite no one entering the building. On December 3, 1984, the diocese made the decision to permanently close St. Augustine. They sealed the doors with chains and posted a notice that the building would be demolished in the spring. But spring came, and the church remained standing. The demolition crew arrived in April 1985, but their equipment malfunctioned within hours of starting work. The foreman broke his leg when scaffolding collapsed inexplicably. 2 workers quit on the first day, refusing to explain why. The diocese quietly abandoned the demolition plan, and the Church of St. Augustine was simply forgotten, left to decay in silence for the next 40 years. Sarah and Michael Chen discovered the church by accident during a weekend hiking trip. They'd parked their car at what they thought was a trailhead, but their GPS malfunctioned, showing their location flickering between the road and the middle of the forest. Following an old fence line to get their bearings, they pushed through overgrown brush and suddenly emerged into a clearing where the church stood, its white paint peeling in long strips, revealing grey wood underneath. The bell tower leaned slightly to the left, and most of the stained glass windows had shattered, leaving jagged, colourful fragments clinging to the frames. They approached the structure slowly, their footsteps crunching on broken glass and 40 years of accumulated fallen leaves. The church is larger than it appeared from a distance. The main building stretches at least 60 feet in length, with the bell tower adding another 30 feet of height. Ivy has consumed the eastern wall completely, thick vines forcing their way between boards and around window frames. The front doors, once painted deep red, have faded to a sickly pink, and the chains meant to keep people out hang broken, rusted through by decades of rain and neglect. Michael notices something unsettling, fresh footprints in the soft earth near the entrance, leading up to the door and then away again. They're not weathered or old. Someone was here recently, perhaps within the last few days. Sarah points to one of the lower windows, where the glass is completely gone. The curtain inside, rotted and torn, moves slightly, though there's no wind. They exchange a glance, that silent communication between partners who've been together for 12 years. Curiosity wins over caution. The chains fall away easily when Michael pulls on them, and the doors open with surprising ease, as if someone has used them recently. The hinges should be rusted solid after 4 decades, yet they move smoothly, releasing only a soft creak. Sarah pushes her hesitation aside and steps across the threshold first, pulling out her phone to use as a flashlight. Michael follows, his hand instinctively finding hers in the darkness. The smell hits them immediately, not the expected mustiness of abandonment, but something else. Incense. Old incense mixed with candle wax, and underneath it all, something organic and wrong, like flowers left too long in stagnant water. The air inside is cold, much colder than the mild autumn temperature outside, and their breath becomes visible in small clouds. The temperature difference doesn't make sense. Abandoned buildings typically maintain ambient temperature. The sanctuary stretches before them, and despite 40 years of abandonment, it remains hauntingly intact. Wooden pews line both sides of a central aisle, most still in their original positions, though several have been pushed aside to create an open space in the center of the room. Dust covers everything in a thick blanket, undisturbed except for a narrow path down the center aisle where the dust has been swept away, revealing the worn floorboards underneath. Someone has walked this path recently, and frequently. Sarah's flashlight beam sweeps across the walls, illuminating faded paintings of biblical scenes. The faces in the paintings seem to watch them, and Michael notices something disturbing. Someone has scratched out the eyes on every single figure. The Virgin Mary, the Apostles, the angels in the nativity scene, all stare from empty black sockets where eyes should be. The vandalism is methodical, deliberate, done with precision rather than anger. They move slowly down the center aisle, their footsteps echoing too loudly in the hollow space. On the third pew from the front, Sarah finds a book of hymns open to page 147, Abide with Me. The page is marked with a dried flower pressed between the pages, a black rose that crumbles slightly when she touches it. Written in the margin beside the hymn, in blue ink that shouldn't be 40 years old, are the words, He abides, He never left. The altar dominates the front of the sanctuary, elevated 3 steps above the main floor. The white cloth that should cover it has been removed and folded neatly on the steps. On the bare wooden surface, someone has arranged objects in a careful pattern. 13 candles in varying heights, their wax melted down to different levels, suggesting they've been lit and extinguished multiple times. Around the candles, a circle of photographs. Old black and white pictures of people in early 1980s clothing, their faces staring up at the vaulted ceiling. In the center of this arrangement sits the journal, its leather cover dark with age and handling. Michael reaches for the journal, but Sarah touches his arm, stopping him. She's noticed something else. Behind the altar, the wall is covered floor to ceiling with writing. Not painted or carved, but written in what looks like charcoal. Thousands of lines of text in the same handwriting, covering every available inch of surface. The writing is small, cramped, obsessive, and from their distance, completely illegible. But the pattern of it, the way it spirals and repeats, suggests someone spent hours, perhaps days, writing the same things over and over. Sarah picks up the journal. The leather is cold to the touch, unnaturally cold, like it's been stored in a freezer. She opens to the first page, where elegant script identifies the owner. Personal record of Father Thomas Whitmore, Shepherd of St. Augustine, Anno Domini 1978. The early entries are mundane. Notes about sermons, observations about parishioners, requests for supplies from the diocese. Father Whitmore's handwriting in these first pages is neat, controlled, the work of someone educated and careful. She flips forward, watching the entries progress through 1979, 1980, 1981. The handwriting remains steady, but the content shifts. References to unusual sounds during late prayer appear in October 1980. An entry from January 1982 mentions finding the basement door open, though I distinctly remember locking it. By late 1982, the tone has changed entirely. November 14th, 1982. I am not alone in this church. I know this with certainty now. When I pray after midnight, I hear breathing that is not my own. When I turn, nothing is there, but the candles flicker as if someone has just passed by. Michael leans over her shoulder, reading along. The entries become more frequent and more disturbing as they progress into 1983. Father Whitmore describes hearing children singing in the empty church, finding wet footprints leading from the basement to the altar with no explanation for their source, discovering words scratched into the confessional booth from the inside. On January 3rd, 1983, he writes, I researched the church history at the county archives today. St. Augustine was built on the site of an earlier structure that burned in 1856. 17 people died in that fire, including 8 children who were trapped in the basement. The newspaper accounts say the fire started during an evening service and spread too quickly for escape. They sealed the basement afterward, built directly over the ruins. We have been worshipping above a mass grave for over a century. Sarah's hands tremble slightly as she turns the pages. The handwriting deteriorates through the winter of 1983, becoming shakier, less controlled. Father Whitmore describes attempting to bless the basement, to perform rites of sanctification, but each attempt leaves him physically ill. He mentions objects moving on their own, the crucifix above the altar found facing backward, communion wine turning sour overnight, his own reflection in the vestry mirror showing someone standing behind him when the room is empty. The entry dated March 1st, 1984, spans 3 pages in increasingly manic script. They communicate with me now, not in words I can hear, but in feelings that flood my mind when I'm alone here at night. They are angry about being forgotten, about being sealed beneath unconsecrated ground, about burning while the congregation escaped. They want acknowledgement. They want their names spoken. They want to be remembered. The entry includes a list of 17 names, 8 of them children between the ages of 4 and 12. Michael points to something sketched in the margin of the journal. a diagram of the church building with the basement level drawn below. Father Whitmore has marked specific locations with X's and written notes beside each. Strongest presence here. Cold spot never fades. Children's voices clearest at this point. The diagram shows the basement extending beneath the entire sanctuary, with one area labeled Sealed Section, Original Foundation. They continue reading, unable to stop despite growing unease. The March entries show Father Whitmore's complete psychological unraveling. He describes performing increasingly desperate rituals, mixing Catholic liturgy with elements from older traditions, trying anything to appease or banish the presences he believes inhabit the church. March 10th, 1984. I haven't slept in 4 days. Every time I close my eyes, I see them, the children burning, their hands pressed against the basement door that wouldn't open, the adults trampling each other to escape, the smoke and the screaming and the terrible silence afterward. They show me these things. They make me understand their suffering. The final dated entry is March 14th, 1984, the day before the congregation found Father Whitmore catatonic in the choir loft. The handwriting is barely legible, letters slanting wildly across the page. I understand now what they want. A witness, someone to carry their story, to prevent them from being forgotten again. I have agreed. Tonight I will go to them. I will descend to where they rest, and I will listen to everything they need to say. If I don't return, tell my sister I'm sorry. Tell her I had no choice. They are so lonely. 40 years they waited in the dark, and I cannot abandon them to 40 more. The journal doesn't end there. Sarah turns the page with mounting dread, and the handwriting changes completely. This script is different, smaller, tighter, almost childlike in its careful formation. The entry is dated March 15th, 1984, the day after Father Whitmore's final entry. He came to us. He listened. He understands now. We are not forgotten anymore. Thank you, Father Thomas. Thank you for remembering our names. The next 50 pages contain entries that span the 40 years since the church's abandonment, written in multiple handwriting styles. Different people, or different entities, have continued Father Whitmore's journal. Some entries are simple, still here, still waiting. Others are more elaborate, describing visitors who occasionally break into the abandoned church, what they do while inside, how they react to the cold spots and strange sounds. A chilling entry from July 1993 reads, "A teenage boy came today with spray paint. He wanted to mark the walls with his name. We made our presence known. He left very quickly and did not mark anything. Good." Sarah finds entries from 2003, 2011, 2019, and most disturbingly, from last week. The handwriting in the recent entry is shaky, but determined. New visitors come tomorrow. We have prepared. Perhaps they will listen. Perhaps they will remember our names as Father Thomas did. We are patient. We have learned patience over 168 years. Michael steps back from the altar, his face pale. We should leave, right now. But Sarah is staring at something else she's found in the journal, a folded piece of paper tucked between the last written page and the blank pages that follow. She unfolds it carefully. It's a newspaper clipping from 1856, yellowed and brittle, describing the tragic fire at the Methodist meeting house that stood on this site. The article lists the 17 victims by name, details the investigation that concluded the fire was accidental, mentions the controversy over the church being rebuilt directly over the site rather than relocating. Someone, presumably Father Whitmore, has highlighted one sentence: the basement door was found barred from the outside, though officials insist this was likely damage from the fire's collapse. A sound from the back of the church makes them both spin around. The front doors, which they left open, are now closed. They didn't hear them shut. Michael moves quickly toward them, Sarah following close behind, but stops halfway down the aisle. In the dim light filtering through broken windows, he can see something they missed when they entered: The pews they thought were simply pushed aside are actually arranged in a specific pattern, creating pathways that form a shape when viewed from above. From their position on the altar they couldn't see it, but from the center aisle it's unmistakable. The pews form the outline of flames, spreading from a central point in the middle of the floor. If you're still watching, hit that like button. We're about to discover what's beneath this church, and you won't want to miss what happens next. Sarah notices a door behind the altar that they initially missed, hidden partially by the wall covered in writing. It's slightly ajar, revealing darkness beyond. A set of stairs descends into the basement that Father Whitmore obsessed over in his journal. Michael pulls out his phone to call for help, but discovers he has no signal. The bars have disappeared completely, even though they had service when they parked the car. Sarah's phone shows the same thing. They are effectively cut off. They approach the basement door together. The writing on the wall becomes legible as they get closer. It's the same 17 names, written over and over in various sizes, thousands of times across the entire surface. Eleanor Marcus, age 34. Thomas Marcus, age 38. William Chen, age 9. Sarah Chen, age 7. The names continue, a litany of the dead, repeated obsessively. Michael freezes when he sees his own surname among the victims. Sarah Chen, age 7, died in the fire of 1856. It's coincidence, it must be, but the similarity to his wife's name feels intentional, personal. The basement stairs are wooden and steep, disappearing into complete darkness. Cold air flows up from below, carrying that same wrong smell, incense and decay and something chemical, like matches being struck. Sarah's flashlight beam doesn't penetrate far into the darkness. It's absorbed somehow, as if the shadows below are thicker than natural darkness should be. Against every instinct screaming at them to leave, they begin to descend. The stairs creak under their weight, and Sarah counts 13 steps before they reach the bottom. The basement is larger than should be possible. The ceiling is low, barely 6 feet high, forcing Michael to duck slightly, but the space extends in all directions beyond the reach of their flashlight beams. Stone walls weep with moisture, and the floor is dirt, hard-packed and cold. Directly at the base of the stairs, someone has created a memorial. 17 candles stand in glass holders, arranged in a semicircle. Behind them, propped against the stone wall, are photographs. Recent photographs, color prints that can't be more than a few years old. They show different people standing in this exact spot in this basement, looking at this memorial. 20 or 30 different individuals, captured at different times, all standing where Sarah and Michael now stand. In each photograph, the person's face shows the same expression. Not fear exactly, but understanding, as if they've just learned something profound and terrible. Michael moves his flashlight beam along the wall and discovers more writing carved directly into the stone. These aren't names, but messages, scratched into the rock over many years. I heard them. JM 1987. They spoke to me. KP 1999. I will remember. TL 2015. Not forgotten anymore. SK 2023. Dozens of initials and dates spanning the 40 years since Father Whitmore's breakdown, evidence that they aren't the first to descend into this basement, and others felt compelled to leave marks of their visit. In the far corner of the basement, Sarah's light catches something that makes her breath stop. A section of the wall is different, newer bricks filling what must have been an opening at some point. This is the sealed section Father Whitmore mentioned in his diagram, the original foundation from the 1856 building. Someone has removed several bricks at the base, creating a gap just large enough for a person to crawl through. The edges of the gap are clean, the work recent. This is what Father Whitmore must have done on March 14, 1984, when he wrote about going to where they rest. Neither of them wants to look through that gap, but Sarah finds herself moving toward it as if pulled. She kneels down, directing her flashlight through the opening. The beam illuminates a small chamber beyond, maybe 10 feet square. The walls are scorched black, fire damage preserved for 168 years in this sealed space. On the floor, arranged in positions that suggest people desperately trying to escape, are bones. Not many, not 17 full skeletons, but enough. A small skull that must have belonged to a child. The remnants of what might be 8 or 9 people who died here when fire consumed the meeting house above them. And in the center of this space, sitting among the bones as if keeping them company, is a figure. Sarah's scream dies in her throat. It's Father Thomas Whitmore, or what remains of him. He's sitting cross-legged, his skeletal hands folded in prayer, still wearing the tattered remnants of his cassock. He's been here for 40 years, sealed in with the victims he wanted so desperately to acknowledge. His skull is tilted slightly upward, facing the direction where the church floor would be above him, and between his jawbones, someone has placed a rosary. Michael pulls Sarah back from the opening, and they stumble toward the stairs. But Sarah stops, turning back. On a stone ledge near the memorial candles, she sees one more thing, a new journal, its leather cover unmarked and fresh. Next to it lies a pen. The message is clear. The pattern Father Whitmore started, that others have continued, waits for new participants. They run up the basement stairs and through the sanctuary. The front doors open easily now, and they burst into the afternoon sunlight, gasping like they've been underwater. Behind them, the Church of St. Augustine stands silent and still, but when Sarah glances back at the broken windows, she sees movement in the shadows inside. Not threatening, not aggressive, just present, watching, waiting. In the car, driving away as fast as the overgrown road allows, Sarah realizes she's still clutching the journal. She didn't mean to take it, didn't consciously grab it, but it's in her hands now. Michael's knuckles are white on the steering wheel. Neither of them speaks for the first 10 miles. That night, in their hotel room 3 towns away, Sarah opens the journal again. She reads through the entries once more, understanding now what Father Whitmore understood, what drove him to that final descent into the sealed chamber. These 17 people didn't just die in a fire, they were forgotten. Their deaths were treated as an unfortunate accident, their remains built over and sealed away, their names recorded briefly in a newspaper and then lost to time. For 128 years, they rested beneath a church that never acknowledged them, while congregations prayed and sang above their unmarked grave. Father Whitmore couldn't bear that neglect. His initial research into their deaths became obsession, and obsession became communication, and communication became action. He didn't go mad. He went willingly to be their witness, their eternal memorial, their proof that someone cared enough to remember. The journal entries from other visitors make sense now too. Each person who descended those stairs, who saw what Sarah and Michael saw, felt compelled to leave evidence of their awareness. I will remember. Not a threat, but a promise. Not a curse, but an acknowledgement. The presences in that church don't want vengeance or to harm anyone. They simply want what every human wants, to be remembered, to have their story told, to not disappear completely from the world. Sarah finds herself thinking about the names. Eleanor Marcus, age 34. Thomas Marcus, age 38. William Chen, age 9. Sarah Chen, age 7. Alice Potter, age 11. James Potter, age 6. She speaks them aloud, all 17, reading from the list Father Whitmore copied into his journal. Michael listens without interrupting. When she finishes, the hotel room feels warmer somehow, less oppressive. The weight that's been pressing on Sarah's chest since they left the church eases slightly, but questions remain unanswered. Who has been maintaining the memorial candles in the basement for 40 years? Who wrote the recent entries in Father Whitmore's journal? Who left the new journal waiting for the next visitor? The church has been abandoned by the diocese, forgotten by the community, locked away and left to decay. Yet someone, or something, continues the work Father Whitmore started. The thought should be terrifying, but Sarah finds it strangely comforting. Even in abandonment, even in decay, memory persists. The dead aren't forgotten while someone still speaks their names. The Church of St. Augustine will never be demolished now. The diocese has officially classified it as structurally unsound and prohibitively expensive to remove, which is bureaucratic language for "we're never going back there." The building will stand for however long wood and stone can resist gravity and weather, gradually collapsing into itself, returning to the earth that holds its secrets. The basement will remain sealed. Father Whitmore's remains will rest among those he chose to commemorate, and the journals will continue to accumulate entries from visitors who stumble upon the site and can't resist descending those 13 steps into darkness. Sarah decides she will not add her name to the wall. She will not leave an entry in the journal, but she will do something else. She will tell this story, share what she and Michael discovered, ensure that the 17 names are spoken and remembered beyond the walls of that abandoned church. Eleanor Marcus, Thomas Marcus, William Chen, Sarah Chen, Alice Potter, James Potter, Benjamin Cross, Mary Cross, Helen White, David Wright, age 43, Susan Wright, age 41, Emma Wright, age 5, Joseph Martin, Rebecca Foster, Catherine Bell, Daniel Ross, age 29, Anna Ross, age 27. 17 people who died on a spring evening in 1856 when fire consumed the Methodist meeting house. 17 people who were buried beneath the church that replaced their place of worship. 17 people who waited 168 years for someone to care enough to remember. As Sarah and Michael drive away from that region the next morning, heading home to their normal lives, Sarah keeps the journal. It sits on the seat between them, a physical reminder of what they witnessed. She knows she should probably give it to authorities, to historians, to someone who can properly contextualize and preserve it, but she also knows she won't. The journal is evidence of something authorities wouldn't believe and historians couldn't explain. It's a record of faith taken to its extreme, of empathy stretched across the boundary between life and death, of one man's absolute commitment to ensuring the forgotten are remembered. The last thing Sarah notices just before they merge onto the highway is her phone signal returning. 3 bars, then 4, then full service. Notifications flood in, messages and emails accumulated during their disconnection. Normal life resuming, the modern world reasserting itself. But when she looks at Michael, she knows they're both changed by what they experienced. They carry those 17 names now, and the weight of them, and the responsibility to keep speaking them so the dead don't slip back into oblivion. The Church of St. Augustine stands empty once more, its doors closed, its sanctuary silent, except for the wind through broken windows. In the basement, candles burn in their glass holders, though no one living lit them. The memorial remains tended, the photographs continue to accumulate, and somewhere in the darkness beyond that gap in the brick wall, Father Thomas Whitmore keeps his eternal vigil. The church is abandoned, but it is not empty. It never has been. And for anyone who stumbles upon it in the future, who descends those stairs and sees what Sarah and Michael saw, the message remains clear. Remember us. Speak our names, bear witness to our existence. It's all we ask, and it's everything. If this story moved you, leave a like and subscribe to the channel for more explorations of forgotten places and the hidden histories they hold. In the comments below, tell us, have you ever encountered a place that felt like it was holding on to memories of the past? Do you believe the dead can communicate their need to be remembered? Hit that notification bell and we'll take you on the next journey into abandoned spaces where the past refuses to stay buried. Until then, remember the names. Always remember the names.